When I moved into my new apartment, I was looking forward to a fresh start. It was a charming old building with a lot of character, and my apartment was cozy and just the right size for me. I was eager to settle in and get to know my neighbors. Little did I know that my new home would become the setting for a chilling psychological ordeal. It all started with the neighbor next door. I never saw them, but I knew they were there. I could hear them moving around, the faint sound of footsteps and the occasional thud of something being dropped. At first, I thought nothing of it. People have their own schedules and habits, after all. But then strange things began to happen. Late at night, I would hear the sound of a TV blaring through the thin walls. It wasn't the volume that bothered me, but the content. It was always static, just the endless grating noise of a TV with no signal. It would go on for hours, stopping suddenly, only to start again the next night. I tried knocking on the door to ask them to turn it down, but there was never any answer. I even left a polite note, but the static continued. It was starting to get to me, making it difficult to sleep. I began to feel a creeping unease every time I walked past their door, a sense that something wasn't quite right. One night, unable to sleep, I decided to investigate. I pressed my ear against the wall, trying to make out any sounds beyond the static. What I heard made my blood run cold. Amidst the static, there was a faint, rhythmic tapping, like someone was tapping their fingers against a hard surface. It was slow and deliberate, almost like a code. I pulled back from the wall, my heart pounding. What was going on in there? My mind raced with possibilities, each one more unsettling than the last. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe they were just an insomniac with strange habits. But deep down, I knew something was very wrong. The next day, I called the building manager, Mr. Thompson, and explained the situation. He promised to check on the neighbor and get back to me. I waited anxiously all day, but when I saw him later, he looked puzzled. I knocked on the door, but there was no answer, he said. I even called out, but no one responded. I'll try again tomorrow. That night, the static returned, louder than ever. The tapping was more insistent, almost frantic. I lay in bed, my mind racing. I had to do something. I couldn't live like this. Desperate, I called the police and explained the situation. They agreed to do a welfare check. I waited in my apartment, listening for any sounds from next door. After what felt like an eternity, there was a knock on my door. 2 officers stood there, looking concerned. We checked the apartment, one of them said. No one was there. What do you mean? I asked, bewildered. I hear them every night. The officer nodded. We searched the place. It's empty. No furniture, no signs of anyone living there. A cold chill ran down my spine. How could that be? I had heard them, felt their presence. The officers assured me they would keep an eye on the place and left, but their words did little to ease my fear. That night, the static and tapping returned. I felt like I was losing my mind. If the apartment was empty, where were the sounds coming from? I couldn't take it anymore. I had to find out for myself. Summoning all my courage, I decided to sneak into the apartment. I knew it was risky, but I was desperate for answers. I waited until the building was quiet, and then made my way to the door next door. It was unlocked. I pushed it open slowly, my heart pounding in my chest. The apartment was dark and empty, just as the police had said. I stepped inside, my footsteps echoing eerily in the silence. I turned on my flashlight and scanned the room. There was nothing, just bare walls and a dusty floor. As I moved further in, I noticed something strange. The wall separating our apartments had a small hole in it, barely noticeable unless you were looking for it. I approached cautiously and peered through. On the other side, I could see into my own apartment. My living room was clearly visible, and I realized with a start that someone had been watching me. The tapping started again, louder now, as if they knew I was there. My blood ran cold as I backed away, the realization hitting me hard. I had been watched the entire time. The static, the tapping, it was all a way to unnerve me, to keep me on edge. I fled back to my apartment, locking the door behind me and calling the police again. This time, they took me seriously. They searched the building thoroughly, and found evidence that someone had been using the empty apartment as a hideout, spying on me through the hole in the wall. The police increased their patrols, and the building manager changed the locks and sealed the hole. But the damage was done. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, the sense of violation. I moved out shortly after, unable to stay in a place that had become a source of fear and anxiety. Even now, in my new apartment, I find myself checking the walls for holes, listening for any unusual sounds. The experience left me paranoid and constantly on edge, a reminder that sometimes the things that go bump in the night are all too real. And the most terrifying part is that you never know who might be watching from the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike.